It's here, it's beautiful, and it is for the entire world to see. The EA college football trailer has dropped. We'll talk about that and why I think this is not a Madden reskin, unlike half the internet. We're also talking NCAA. They're in the news again with their legal troubles, and finally, more best bets because, hey, that's what you guys come to the channel to see, positive or negative. We'll talk about all that and more right here on the Three Technique.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Welcome in, one and all, young and old, to another edition of the Three Technique College Football Podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. I'm Mitch Mason, Garrett Turney riding shotgun on tonight's episode. And Garrett, we got it. We got the full reveal trailer. No gameplay yet, but the trailer in 2 minutes of just unbridled glory is here. And I'm excited to talk about it, man. We've waited 10 years. We're about 2 months away from getting the game once again. Gotta think that's put a little wind in your sails.
Oh, for sure. When the trailer dropped, I was actually like at the tail end of a class. And so I had some of my students that were watching it because they're all college football guys, right? And like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And then I saw the group text start to blow up with you and Trey. And I'm just like, I got to wait a couple more minutes. Hold on. Wait, no spoilers. Nobody say anything yet. And so one of those awful, like, couldn't be there night of the premiere situations where you're just trying to dodge spoilers while you're finishing out the class. And then, passing period hit and I had 5 minutes. So I was like, all right, here we go. Let's get the trailer.
It was worth the wait. I forgot what was going on. I had it queued up. I was ready to see it live, and then someone at work ended up needing me, and so I heard it start in my earbud and was like, nope, like took it out, like no,
You
no,
just
no.
start sitting here, you're like, yeah,
I have to give
yeah.
I have to give this person my undivided attention. It was funny talking with one of the doctors after it premiered and just geeking out, right? I mean, just going back to our school days, being a couple of 12-year-olds, right? Loving to play that game. So I think it's something that hopefully is going to unify the entire college football community. No matter what team you root for, you probably have an interest in this. And I'm excited to talk about the trailer specifically. I think why those people that are pushing this narrative that it's a Madden reskin, first of all, are just doom and gloomers. I guess we're not allowed to get excited about anything. But two, why I think they're going to be wrong. We'll talk about that in a moment. We have to talk about the NCAA, the injustice that they are pushing on all Group of Five schools and beyond as this lawsuit gets closer and closer to being settled. We'll talk about that in segment 2, and then finally rounding the show out with a couple more best bets. So far, we've given out, I think, what's some pretty sound financial advice. We'll get to some more free tokens of wisdom, hopefully, in just a little bit later as well. But Garrett, of course, this episode, all of our episodes brought to you by HomefieldApparel.com, the good brand, letting you have 15% off your entire order if you use code 3TechPod. If you're a first-time listener, you can use that. If you are a return purchaser, which I continue to see orders go out, using our discount code, if you go to the link in our link tree, which you can find in our bio on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, that gets you the same discount, and it continues to support the show, which we really do appreciate. I'm wearing my Take Me to Happy Valley t-shirt. Garrett's got a whole display going back there, a whole second wardrobe brought to you by the good brand. I know they're doing a lot of IndyCar stuff right now. They've got a bunch of college baseball stuff going on, but like I said on the last show, don't wait until August to get your college football gear when everyone else is trying to do the same. Get it now. Get your logos, and let's be ready to rock by the time this new college football game drops, huh?
Yeah, and I got to tell you what, Mitch, I'm going to have to add to this display back here due to some of the love that we've gotten from some of the people that are new to the pod. I'm going to be making a little GBR purchase going up to Nebraska for a
Sure.
little Nebraska shirt. I want to say shout out to our Nebraska fans who are showing up for the first time and
Yep.
saw our video with us showing any sort of positivity towards Nebraska. It seems like it's been very popular to hate the last several years, this Nebraska team, and not completely unwarranted, but
Right.
man, it's just exciting to see the turnout and exciting to see the optimism in the comment section and everything else. So welcome, Nebraska fans. And if y'all keep showing up, we're gonna put some red in this display over here. We're gonna put a little GBR shirt back there. We're gonna have some fun times with the Cornhusker fans.
Tell you what, the range that this show has, man. We've given hope to Nebraska fans. We've made Texas Tech fans happy. Heck, Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach at Texas, is over here liking our tweets. So we're making the Longhorns happy. We've made the Sooners mad north of the Red River. I mean, we're doing a lot over here on the Three Tech.
And I got to say, Oklahoma fans, look, we're sorry that you don't like our take. I want to specifically shout out Mr. Sooner. You seemed extremely upset with me and with our takes here. We are sorry about that. We just call it like we see it. And we're sorry that we hurt your feelings. We don't have anything against Norman. We don't have anything
No,
against the state of Oklahoma.
beautiful town.
And we don't even necessarily think Oklahoma is going to be that bad of a team. It's just the schedule. How many times I got to say it in the comment section? It's just the schedule. The schedule is about as brutal as it comes for the Sooners.
What's funny is we didn't give out a side on that over under, right? We used the 7.5 as kind of the starting point of discussion, and everyone, all the Sooner fans reacted like we predicted they were going 0-12. We didn't give out a side on that bet. Now, I mean,
Right.
take the analysis for what side you think we're probably on, but listen, 8-9 wins for Oklahoma is a good year. Year one in the SEC, and
Oh yeah, especially
I
on
think
that schedule. That means they're pulling some upsets.
right. I think teams like Arkansas and Auburn, Mississippi State, seeing the comments like, no, we've got all this production and our running backs are good, are going, yeah, just wait.
We have one good running back, and Arkansas is like, yeah, when that guy goes down week 3, you have nothing. You just have nothing anymore.
I'm just saying, like you made the point, it's not the Big 12 anymore. Everybody feels like they're going to do good going into the year. And then in the SEC, it's just not the case, right? I mean, the sausage gets made and someone gets ground out in that process. So, probably a little bit of a reality check coming for Oklahoma, but
I do want to say real quick with it. Thank you so much to all of our Oklahoma haters, though. Y'all hate watch that video to a pretty solid view number for us. So if you also hate our takes on Oklahoma, head down over there and go find that video on our channel. And you'll see the comments, and you can hate watch it just like all the other Sooner fans.
It was a popular video, that's for sure. All right. EA College Football, it's back, baby, and we're going to talk about the trailer and most importantly, why the gameplay will be good enough. So if you're on the podcast side, you're going to be listening to this. If you're on the YouTube side, Garrett's going to be rolling the trailer in the background because, hey, it was too good not to have going, right? I mean, I might as well get to watch it as many times as we can. I know I've watched it multiple times. I've watched breakdown videos of it. I mean, it's just, we've waited a decade, right? And I want to consume as much content as we can. But obviously the trailer was, I think, as epic as any video game trailer that we've seen in the sports realm, right? Sports games, yes, are certainly meant to be graphically amazing. I think you look at 2K, you look at Madden, they do a really good job, even MLB The Show. But for I think sports games in general, it's typically not what Battlefield or what Red Dead Redemption has been. These games that are built first and foremost on graphics. And I think that the traditions, the equipment all looks insane. But what everybody really wants to know is how the gameplay is going to be. And Garrett, when you hear and when you've read comments that are trying to spoil the moment, what are those comments? What do they say?
It seems like a lot of people are looking at some of the like motion mechanics from what I've seen and saying like, okay, well, this looks like this is going to be very similar in gameplay. And look, to a certain degree, there's only so many ways that you can skin a pig, right? There's only so many ways that you can actually do this thing. And, I'm thinking okay, like our, passing mechanics going to look the same? Our running mechanics going to look the same? Are there certain things that you're going to be able to do that are going to look very similar? Like, yeah, obviously, like there's going to be certain things that are going to look just similar, but I just to call it a reskin, like to a certain degree, every time you have a sports game, it's just going to be a reskin, right? It's we're gonna update the graphics a little bit, we're gonna throw a new thing in there, but there's so much that they've put into finding the traditions. There's so much they've put into making sure it feels like the real deal, feels like the actual experience, and it's not just like, hey, they threw in that one little thing. It actually is looking like they're trying to throw in all the traditions and all of what makes college football so special. And to me, that's the thing that stands out, right? There's going to be certain game modes. There's going to be certain things. I mean, there's only so many ways, again, that you can put, football on a gridiron and let people play it, right? You're not going to completely, you know, innovate the whole thing to a completely new thing. But, it just at a certain point, I think that you have to acknowledge like this is a lot of work to build up what college football is. Obviously, the graphics are a massive step in the right direction. And for the fact that it is a sports video game, this trailer was one of the more exciting trailers that I've seen, for any video game. There've been,
Yeah.
3 or 4 maybe ever that I've thought like, "Oh yeah, this has me really excited and hyped for a game," besides just this trailer.
I think what folks are arguing is kind of two different things. On one hand, they're saying it's a Madden reskin because it's made by EA. It's made
Sure.
on the same engine, right? Well, no duh. It's going to be made
Right.
on the same engine, right? EA is not going to invest the millions of dollars and millions of dollars in resources and manpower that it would take to construct an entirely new operating system and graphics engine. Like that's not going to happen. Of course, it's going to be built on the Frostbite engine, which is inherently a graphics first and an animation first engine, right? You think back to Battlefield when that was coming out, the destruction, the levolution, that was like a next step in video game animations, right? So that is not inherently made for like the smoothest gameplay, maybe like a natural football game might progress, but that's okay. It's a video game.
Right.
We're supposed to get more of an arcade style, right? I think what folks are missing is all of the context that's been added into this where EA and the moles that are kind of putting out information as they're allowed to, they're saying this is going to be a faster game. They're saying this is going to be a looser game in order to encapsulate that energy and what makes college football unique. They are speeding up the pace of play of this game. Now, in Madden, what's the number one issue with Madden? It's too slow. It's too animation based, right? In
Yeah.
the NFL level, of course, everything's faster than in college because the players are better. Everyone is elite at the NFL level. But at the college level, I think it was maybe Eric Mayweather or Bangle, one of the big YouTubers pointed this out. At the college level, speed looks different because some guys are just that much better
Hmm.
than everybody else, right? But as a whole, with the energy that's around the stadium, with the traditions, with the different playbooks, which they say there's 134 different playbooks in this game, one for each team, all of that will be amplified by what they're saying is a faster pace of play, a faster, looser game that I think is going to get us closer to what NCAA 14 was than what Madden 24 was.
Yeah, well, and the other big thing about it too is just, there's so many other things you can do with this just because of the fact that college football is different than the NFL, right? There's certain things that just don't happen the same way, right? Like, so for example, hopefully, and I'm still crossing my fingers with a large contingent on Twitter, we're rooting for mascot mode, right? We're rooting for that to actually, show up. We can still do the mascot showdowns and all that. But there's also things, the dynasties and everything else that, if you're playing this, you can still do this to some degree, but it just looks different in college football, right? It just is going to
Yeah.
be different. You're not going to just be playing the regular, 17 game schedule plus playoffs. This is like, there's rivalry games. There's, all the different recruiting elements of
Yeah.
everything. Whereas, you don't have
Transfer
like,
portal.
yeah, transfer portal. I'm curious to see what they do with NIL and just all
Yeah.
that. And, they're going to have all of that to play with in addition to, oh yeah, there's an expanded college football playoff that we haven't even seen. This might be kind of our first experience with it, is not watching it on the field in real life, but actually playing it in the game and kind of seeing like how that feels and what it looks like to have that kind of intense playoff. And so, this is going to be a lot of fun. And also just this, take all of this backwards, right? Let's take all of this off of that pressure, right? Let's take the whole thing out of context for just a second. Don't try to police fun, right? There's just so many people that they're so just hell-bent on just, no, this is bad. I don't no, you're getting the game for the first time in a while. We had to rely on sketchy revamp files for the past decade.
Yeah.
And stuff that maybe didn't work right if the shaders changed or there was a different graphics card or something like that. And now we're actually going to get the game. And we don't have to feel weird about it. And we can just have the game. And also, who cares if it's kind of a reskin? We still want to go play as those players. We still want to go have those game modes. This is what we want. This is something that people want. And if people are excited about it, sorry if it doesn't meet your 3 or 4 obscure criteria for being a good game, right? I'm sorry if it doesn't hit that for you. I hope you can forgive it for just being the first college football game in a decade, right? I hope you can find a way to, in your heart, forgive EA for maybe coming up a little bit short on something their first time back.
Well, this is literally that's the other thing. This is not the Madden team that has just been pulling double duty to produce both Madden 25 and the new college football game. This is an entirely new team. This was a dev team that was built from the ground up. And dude, reading some of the reports, some of the interviews that have come out since the release of this trailer, originally the plan for this game was to have 50 stadiums built to spec, right? 50 of the biggest, best stadiums that were going to be identical to what they were in real life. And then that dev team realized that won't be good enough. We can't just stop at 50. And so they literally had to go to the drawing board and come up with a whole new methodology that would go, okay, building all of these stadiums we thought was going to be impossible. How do we make it possible? And what they came up with was a solution that allowed them to essentially go brick by brick to not only create the size and the scope, but the lighting, the atmosphere, and the background around the stadium too, right? Kinnick Stadium will have the Children's Hospital in the background, right? College towns are going to have their water towers in the background. Wyoming, over in Appalachia, the mountains, the trees are all in the background, right? You feel not like you're just playing in a stadium, but you feel like you are playing in a city, in a town, on a college campus. That is completely new to sports games in general, right? Because Madden has done it with stadium exteriors, and MLB The Show has done it with stadium exteriors. But not once have you ever gotten to play where you're looking out beyond the stadium with any real sort of perspective, right? You play on MLB The Show and you play in San Diego. Yeah, you've got some, kind of cartoony looking skyscrapers and a, real 1D plane that flies past every 2 or 3 minutes, right? But this they just showed the Wyoming shot, right? The size, the grandeur that they've brought, to me, man, it's all worth it. And you know what? The gameplay may not be perfect. That's okay. Like you said, it's their first time in 10 years. Am I going to buy the game and enjoy the heck out of whatever we get? For sure.
Yeah. Well, and also, if the gameplay is not perfect, sorry, but also that's kind of some of the funny things about some of these previous games is when the gameplay and the engine was a little bit weird and you could kind of abuse some stuff. We want it to be perfect and accurate and everything else, but there'll be some funny things about it that we say oh yeah, I remember the 25 game, that was the one where they did this thing and the spin move was weird or something like that, and if you just ran at the right angle you could spin and juke 3 people at the same time. But it's little things like that which it can be a little bit of a flaw, but it's endearing, especially when you look at the effort they put into every other detail, right? I think that's the part that people are going to like. I know for me, one of the first times that I played, any of these college football video games, I just thought it was cool that I was at my team's home stadium. Yeah. And it wasn't even as close or as accurate as this is. It was just kind of that blocky sort of, lots of, textures. You can see all the edges and everything. but this is actually going to look like, wait, I'm actually looking up at places that I've sat when I was in college, right? And that's going to be
Right.
kind of cool to look at that and relate with that and say, oh, look, this is like the run-in that we had, and this was the like halftime tradition, and this is what it actually sounds like. And I look, if it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but they did so many things right.
Yeah.
And look, at some point, you're not going to win everybody. Nothing goes 100%. So if there's 1, 2, 3, 4% of people that are just, gonna get hung up on it, well, let them be sad. I feel bad for them.
Right. I mean, if you weren't going to buy the game, then you weren't going to buy the game
Yeah.
anyway. No, the biggest compliment that I can give to the EA devs, and I mean, I tweeted this as well, watching the trailer and seeing some of these run ins, I felt like I was back in college again.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, there was an aspect of, oh my gosh, I've been there. I've seen that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. That is what we're looking for. The main player base of this will be like ages 25 to 45, right? And we're not going to mess with the microtransactions. Ultimate Team can, kick rocks. We're going to be playing Dynasty mode. We're going to be playing Road to Glory, and we're going to be playing our friends online. And that is college football video games in a nutshell. That's what we
Yeah.
want, and I'm so excited to get that back.
Yeah. It's just exciting. It's just an exciting time. This is what we waited for.
Right.
So, it's coming, and here we go. Let's get ready for it.
All right. Well, let's we'll keep talking EA as we go throughout. I mean, we're 2 months out from the release. I'm excited about it. July 19th, I believe, is when it releases for everybody. So we'll pass along news. We'll chat about it as we get closer. On the other side of this break, though, the NCAA, they're getting closer to potentially resolving this lawsuit that they've got for player compensation. What the possible model looks like, and how much they're going to charge the group of 5 schools to get it done. We'll talk about that next on the 3 Tech. Well, the House versus the NCAA is supposedly getting ready to draw towards a conclusion that, Garrett, it would mean we're going to have a revenue sharing model, a win for the players who, according to a couple of lawsuits from 2016, 2017, say that, hey, we're not getting the fair enough share of what we're generating for y'all. Fair point. But the results are maybe some detrimental, or at least sweeping changes to the college landscape that we're going to have to witness here probably in the next 2 years or so. Some people are really going to benefit from this, and other people are really going to be hurt from this. Start with this before I kind of summarize everything. When you hear revenue sharing in college sports, what does that mean to you? What do you think of?
Look, when I'm just thinking revenue sharing at first, I'm thinking that this is just going to disproportionately kind of hurt the small guy. And it's not going to be the big football programs that struggle with this because, if you have the money to spend, you can spend it. And if you can kind of grab that and leverage that, that's going to be good. But man, like, I was even thinking, last night when we were, kind of celebrating some women's tennis and,
Yeah,
watching that whole feed, it was a rough feed to watch. Like it wasn't a great, camera angle. It wasn't an awesome venue necessarily, but that's just kind of what they're working with, right? That's a lot of college athletics, even at the D1 level. You're just not going to be working with a whole lot, right? There's, a lot of these like smaller scale, sports that they're just not working with a bunch. And so they're going to do the best that they can. And, shout out that ESPN has the infrastructure to broadcast any of it, or else we just have to hear about it the next day. But, it's stuff like this that gets me worried about those types of things in the future. We're a college football podcast. I don't know that it has the biggest effect on college football, but you're going to see it trickle down into everything else we love about college athletics. And, that's really where I think the rub is there. I think that's where we're going to see the bigger issues.
I think there are so many trickle downs that, I mean, heck, it's just kind of the name of the game, right? Like since
Mhm.
NIL, it feels like we're having consequences every single day. We're having to
Yeah.
adjust on the fly, right? So basically, the summary looks like this, and I tweeted out. So Pete Thamel put together a lengthy article on this, and I've tweeted it out. So at 3Tech Pod, go find that. You can read it in its entirety. I also tweeted out that link with the GIF of Michael saying, "Explain this to me like I'm 5." So I'm gonna try and summarize it for you.
I definitely need that because this, my casual read through the day to day had me a little bit head spinning going, huh? What does that mean? Huh?
it was a
Did I read that right?
long, yeah,
Yeah.
legal jargon
It was very
filled
good, just not good for
article.
split attention.
So basically, what it looks like is this: the NCAA is being sued by a lot of different people over revenue sharing. Right? Athletes saying we're not getting a fair enough cut of what we are producing, what we're worth for you, and that is true. Right? That's what started this whole NIL debate in the first place. So essentially, what the reported framework looks like is that the each university would have $20 million ish to spend on players every single year. And this is not per sport, this is department wide. So that means a couple of different things. One, that we would probably be eliminating scholarship limits. It's essentially on the teams to divide that money as they see fit. So if you need, $2 million to pay a quarterback, then you only have $18 million to compensate the rest of your athletic program. So with Title IX, you've got to be fair with everything. They would have to do some, arithmetic, right, to balance out the rest or distribute the rest of that money. Um, so scholarship limits, probably a thing of the past. In baseball right now, it's 11.7 is the famous scholarship limit, which
Yeah.
makes no sense. So now if you wanted 20 scholarships for baseball, hey, go for it. That's part of your cash, right? It also likely gets rid of collectives. If we're under a revenue sharing model where each team has roughly the same amount of money to spend on their players, then collectives kind of lose their purpose, right? This whole pay for
Mhm.
play model that collectives are hiding under the guise of just providing financial opportunity to their athletes with, they're suddenly useless. Like if giving all of this money doesn't really matter, doesn't really benefit some of these big boosters or just regular community members, then the business of collectives, which is already on shaky ground as it is, and I promise you that from real life experience, that's going to dry up. The downside to that is walk-ons are also likely going to be a thing of the past, right? Now, if
Mhm.
you're building the best possible roster with X amount of money, a salary cap essentially, you're not the well for walk-ons, I think, at least that's what most people are saying, is largely going to dry up. If you
Yeah.
don't have a scholarship limit that then you backfill every other spot with a walk-on, then probably every player is going to be compensated in some form or fashion, thus not making them a walk on. Now, what does the NCAA get out of this? Well, the NCAA basically gets to stop getting sued. They have been sued left, right, and center over the last couple of years, and they keep losing. Their track record in court is abysmal because let's face it, the NCAA is useless. There's no leadership at the top. Charlie Baker stepped in, probably a little too late, and has tried to correct the ship with honestly a lot of very strict policies. But at this point, the NCAA has just been making things up as they go, and when someone calls their bluff, well, they lose in court. So what they would be doing is, if everyone has to opt in to this settlement to benefit from the revenue sharing, one of the rights that they would forfeit is the ability to file a class action lawsuit like these lawsuits that came about in 2016 and 2017. So basically, you can't file a lawsuit on behalf of we the people. You can still sue the NCAA, but it would have to be an individual suit against the organization, which basically what Pete Thamel was saying is the NCAA would make it so expensive that only the bravest and richest athletes would ever dream of doing that, right? So it's legal protection there. Now, with all of that in place, have I lost you, or are you keeping up with me so far?
So, okay, I want to make sure that I'm hearing everything correctly. So, is this just the NCAA redistributing 20 mil per year to a team, or is this like you get to do 20 mil a year and that's like a cap?
So there's not an exact answer on that. The
Okay,
the revenue sharing model that's been reported to us as I read it is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million that
right.
the NCAA has to provide to the schools from the revenue that they make.
Right.
So it's all of the media rights. It's a redistribution of that, and every school gets a
Mhm.
piece of the pie.
But that
Now,
that would go equally to like the Texas Longhorns and then like, Akron or Miami, Ohio or something like that, right? Like is
so
that
I don't that's what I don't know. Is I don't
yeah,
know if it's like it wouldn't make sense for
right.
Texas and Akron or Texas and Central Arkansas to get the
Mhm.
same sliver of pie. Where so I that needs more clarification. I'm sure
Right.
we'll get more details on that as we go along.
Yeah.
If by the time you're listening to this, or maybe you're listening to this as it comes out and you're like, wait, no, I have an answer, tweet us, write in. I'd love to talk with you about that. But as I
Yeah.
read it, right now the proposal is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-ish million dollars. Now, as I mentioned, that's coming from the NCAA as a part of this
Mhm.
settlement. They are the ones that take all of the pie from the media revenue and then would redistribute it, right? That's how revenue sharing works.
Mhm.
But in order to pay for this, here's the rub. Here's where there is no free
Mhm.
lunch. The NCAA plans on withholding a chunk of postseason revenue from every conference in order to pay for this. Now, what does that look like? Well, it's different for every conference. In the current proposal, you would assume that the Power Four would foot the biggest bill, right? They're the biggest,
Right.
richest schools, right? Wrong. In the current proposal, the Power Four conferences are only paying 40% of the bill, while all the other conferences, all the smaller schools, all the cash strapped institutions that exists out there in the United States, they are picking up 60% of the tab. The Big East, for example, a basketball laden conference, that's where they make all of their revenue.
Right.
They're considering action against the NCAA and trying to write all of these letters because they are going to cripple the Big East by taking somewhere of $6 million a year away from that conference. That is a massive piece of the financial pie for the Big East. Some of these conferences are on the hook to lose upwards of 20% of their annual funding just like that. Just
Right.
because the NCAA has now put the burden on the group of five and all the other smaller conferences instead of what seems like proportionally doing it by footing the bill with the Power Four conferences.
Yeah, I've got so many questions and concerns with this. Like I understand that this is still kind of early stages and maybe this is like a tentative agreement, but there's so many ways that I could see this going so catastrophically wrong that I kind of feel like we're gonna just reset in a year. We're like, hey, guess what? You can't sue us, and like we're gonna sue you because we should be able to sue you. Like that's kind of the first thing that I think is gonna happen is you're gonna get some of these institutions actually suing over being able to sue or something like that. So that's kind of the first thing. So couple of things that I'm immediately thinking with all of this. Number one, if that 20 million a year is just going to be a redistributed thing that goes into everyone's pockets who opts in, but they're not going to put any sort of cap on what you're allowed to spend total, then that's a problem, right? Because it's just giving more people more money. It's basically an inflationary measure for all of college football. Everyone's just going to get a little bit more. That's kind of the first thing. I like the idea that it makes you think about your scholarships, right? Because now you can't just go pay the big guy and then nobody else, right? That's not how teams work. You have to actually start letting your athletic directors act like they're thinking about a salary cap, but there's so many issues with that too because number one, obviously bigger schools are going to benefit from this because they can just not pay their football players and make like other companies foot the NIL bill, right? You can just say, hey, we're going to pay football a super flat fee and go get your NIL deals, right? And the big stars are going to get their NIL deals anyways, and it's not going to be from a collective, but it'll be from Joe Schmo's restaurant and so's heating and plumbing or whatever from in town, right? And so that's not really going to fix the competitive balance. And in fact, I think it actually benefits the big schools and the big programs even more because they have the ability to outsource some of that NIL to local business. But that's not even really the other big concern. My biggest concern with this is actually what happens when it gets a Title IX suit. Because right now, it has to be an even number of scholarships under Title IX. Does this address that? Does this address NIL funding having to be even? This is a big legal question I think you're going to have to settle is is your 20 million going to have to split evenly between the men's and the women's sports, or is that discriminatory to, spend maybe 15 million over here because it's your big revenue producers and those are the ones you want to spend on, and then you kick 5 off to women's basketball and volleyball and soccer? Yeah, who cares about the girls, right? That's a weird thing to me where I have a big concern with that too. Also, why would a conference opt into this if you're a small guy? That's like me saying, like, hey, I was walking by the street on Wall Street and those guys just got caught up in a financial scandal. So let me kick in my billions of dollars to help out because I was just there.
Well, so the conferences, if this gets settled, the conferences don't have a say. They're in. As members of the NCAA, they're stuck. Like the Big East and the CAA were quoted saying, like, we're trying to do everything we can to stop this, but like our hands are tied. If they sign this into law, because it's a legal settlement, right? So from the article, it says, while several important details are not finalized, sources have confirmed the following general structure of an agreement to settle the House versus NCAA case. The NCAA's national office would foot the bill for a $2.7 billion payment for past damages over the course of the next 10 years. The NCAA would generate the majority of that money partially by cutting back on funds it distributes to Division I schools on an annual basis. The power conferences would agree to a forward-looking revenue-sharing structure that would give schools the ability to spend a maximum of roughly $20 million per year on direct payments to athletes. The 20 million figure could grow larger every year if school revenue grows. Each school would be left to decide how to allocate that money while remaining compliant with
so it
Title
is a
IX.
salary cap, basically.
So it does become a salary cap, and as it says, that structure is for the power conferences. So that's the answer to that. Apologize overlooking that, but yeah, it's essentially becomes a salary cap. But because we don't know everything about it, like you said, it's up to the schools to decide how they're going to spend that money. So what's the standard for Title IX compliance there? I don't know that we have an answer.
Right, because you could be a school that just decides I want to spend 18 million of this on my football program, and I'm gonna kick 1.5 towards basketball, maybe baseball and softball and women's basketball can pick up the rest, but we don't really care about those anyways, right? And you're just a big football school. That doesn't seem like that's gonna go over really well with a lot of people, and that's where I'm starting to see you're not going to sue the NCAA. You're going to be able to sue like under Title IX for discrimination on that. And I think that's a big issue that they're not thinking about probably that much right now. I mean, unless we've missed something in the article, which is entirely possible. It's long and dense, so there's a good chance we might have missed something. But like, I don't see how this makes things more competitive because, like, obviously, like, okay, so what I was saying about NIL being outsourced from this, like, this isn't the same as NIL, obviously, but NIL still exists. Like, do you think that like University of Alabama, University, Georgia, or Ohio State or Texas or whoever, like, do you think any of those schools are going to struggle to pay players millions of dollars over that cap if they just ask their buddy over at the other place to do it? And because the NCAA is really, really good about cracking down on that stuff. Historically, they're really good about cracking down on illegal payments to players, right? They're going to do a real good job this time around. Trust us, guys. Don't worry, we figured it out now. But here's the issue too. Like, these smaller conferences can't do it, so they won't. Right? Like what you're talking, the Big East can't foot $6 million annually. That's just not feasible for them, and they can't grow with $6 million that they owe to the NCAA just for doing it. And because they can't, they won't. So you're going to see either some massive lawsuit where the Big East leaves the NCAA, and there's some massive rift in like all of college athletics, or the Big East will just stop existing because they can't exist under that model. And that's not what we need to fix college football. What we don't need right now is fewer conferences. We don't want to just get to the point where we're saying, well, it's the SEC and the Big 10 and I guess the Big 12. And if the ACC wants to hold on, I guess, like, then we still got some of those other little ones. And we don't want to do that, right? Like, we enjoy all the different conferences. That's what makes college football so fun and so special, is because those conferences feel like they matter. I know for me personally, as a fan of multiple different sports, I don't care so much about your conference championship games or if the Cowboys win the NFC championship, like, that's nice, but like, I want to win the Super Bowl, right? If the Mavericks go off and they win the Western Conference. Like, that's cool. Go win the finals. Like, that's what I want. And that's the big hardware. And I don't want that to be what college football is. I want it to still matter if you win your conference and if you make the playoff or if you win your bowl game or, if you win the whole thing, right? And obviously the national championship is a thing that everyone aspires to, but there's so many other things that matter to college football right now that we will lose if all these conferences start dissolving because they can't pay, right? This is just something that they're not going to be able to do. And so, and that's something I mentioned, I think, a couple weeks ago, and we talked about this, first time around with some of these lawsuits was if they can't do it, they won't. If it can't work, it won't work. And so because it can't work, it just isn't going to happen. Whether they sign it or not, there has to be some money somewhere for, the Big East to pay the NCAA. If they don't have it, they're not going to go, sell stadiums. They're not going to go do a bake sale or a lemonade stand. That's not going to be how they raise their money. They're just going to not pay them and say, okay, come and take our not money. It's not here.
I think it's dangerous. Obviously, the biggest value is in the power conferences, right? And so that's why they're going to agree to this revenue sharing model.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll probably benefit them in the long run, right? As
Yeah.
they just evolve towards a professional league, a professional sports league, it will benefit them. But for the group of five in these smaller conferences, like you're saying, I don't know what you do, right? You're going to be penalized with none of the benefit, and penalized and punished for something that honestly you're not at the forefront anyway, right? I mean, I don't think an athlete at Central Arkansas or at Eastern Washington is all that concerned about the school holding back, money from
Right.
whatever media that they have. I could be wrong. Maybe that's the case. But when you look at these court cases that are pending, it's all at bigger schools, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
Colorado that's in the news most recently. So, at the end of the day, it's frustrating. I think it's another massive thread that's getting pulled that continues to rip apart the fabric of traditional college sports. It furthers the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and it's all, I think, a result of the iceberg that is the NCAA. I mean, college athletics hit the iceberg that was NCAA and their fraudulent management, for decades, right? And this has just been the slow descent to the bottom of the ocean, unfortunately. And I think this is another step in that direction.
Yeah. Let me try to at least land the plane on a little bit of a positive note, because this has been something I've said consistently since we started the podcast, right? When we were talking about NIL, I said this. When we talked about the transfer portal, I said this. Everything is going to self-regulate, right? College football is not going to go away. There's no way that college football just disappears overnight, right?
Right.
The Sun Belt, for example, or the MAC, for example. These may not be traditional conferences that we see long term and all that, but those teams are still going to exist and they're still going to play football, right? Like, whether or not they're calling themselves the Sun Belt and the Sun Belt's affiliated with the NCAA and everything else, like, Coastal's going to get out there and play football. They're not just going to not play football in a fall. Well, the NCAA said we had to pay them money and we couldn't afford it, so I guess we'll take the fall off. Like, they're going to show up and play football, even if it's not sanctioned or not whatever. Like, they'll still show up. They'll still schedule the teams that they want to schedule from the same Sun Belt Conference, and they'll keep their rivalry games. They'll do the same thing they always have. Maybe it's just a new scrimmage and it doesn't count for NCAA records, but that's not going to matter to the fans, right? The fans aren't going to care if the NCAA counted it. This is the same way that we say, like, who cares if you vacate wins, right? You can vacate as many wins as you want to. We all saw it happen, right? If Michigan gets hit for the Connor Stallions thing, who cares? Banners fly forever. Every Michigan fan knows what it felt like to watch, that team win a championship and, Donovan Edwards, doing his thing in that first quarter and everything else. Like, they're going to remember what that was. And so I'm not worried about college football, right? I'm worried maybe short term for what it means for money and keeping up and being able to compete and everyone still being in the same thing. But long term, even medium term, like, we're still going to play football. Nobody needs to worry about this. At some point, all of this is going to even out. It's all going to settle and we're all going to end up being fine. So, doom and gloom segment, but let's land the plane a little bit positive. It's going to be fine. We're still going to play football, and that's the part that we care about anyways.
There you go. All right, let us know what you think about the lawsuit, about the settlement, all things NCAA at 3Tech Pod, Instagram, Twitter, write in 3techpod at gmail.com. On the other side of this final break, we give you more best bets right here on the 3Tech. All right, our final and most popular segment of the preseason, our 3Tech Pod best bets roll on again for another edition. You guys love them, and you've been following along, hopefully, with our financial advice because, man, we might have made you some money last year. Although we do have to, of course, declare that this is not financial advice, no matter how much you might want that to be so. But we've got two more best bets for you here tonight. Garrett, you are in the SEC taking an over 9.5 win total on a team that has been trending in the right direction.
And normally you wouldn't want to say that an over 9.5 is a best bet. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and try to make that case. It's Missouri. I think the Mizzou Tigers are going to, definitely hit that over. And I think one of the things that you've heard us say multiple times is schedule matters. And I think this team has a beautiful blend of schedule and a great team. So obviously, look, huge season last year, right? 11-2, massive statement, beating a depleted but a still very talented Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And that was a huge season for them. Can't take anything away from them. They finished really, really well. And by the way, finished top 30 in both total offense and total defense. So not a random occurrence. It wasn't just one player being the star. It wasn't just, a really good facet of the game or a good coordinator. This was an entire team effort, a really well-coached team, and players that overall just got along together. There's certainly stars on the team, and you're going to see him again this year, right? Brady Cook's still a stud. He's going to take a big step forward, to pass for over 3,000 yards this last season. I think he's going to make a step forward, be one of the better quarterbacks. And Luther Burden, man, I've been saying his name since day one on this podcast. Luther Burden's one of my favorite players in all of college football, and I think he's going to continue to break out. I wanted to pick him as a breakout candidate for one of our previous breakout, but that's not fair. He's already broken out, man. He's already there. But as much as a already broken out player can break out, that's going to be Luther Burden this year. I think there's a good chance he could end the season as one of the best wide receivers in all of college football, if not taking over that top spot. But look, this is all, fine and well. They had a good portal haul. They had some good defensive players they brought in from the portal. Yeah, they lost some guys. That's going to be college football, right? You're going to lose some guys. You're going to get some guys. I like what they brought in on the defensive side. You're going to have to replace some skill position guys. That's everything. But once again, this is all about schedule. This is not about just what your team is. It's about who your team plays. The schedule is set up so nicely. They have an easy open. Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, Vandy. They should walk straight through that, no problems, and get right back in shape. They have a bye week, and then their first road game is at Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M should be better. Mike Elko should have those boys a lot better. That is still a talented roster, but I think Missouri is still the better team right now. Road games can always be weird. How do they respond? Are there injuries? Right? There's all sorts of things that could happen. But I think right now it'll still be early in the season for A&M, still be figuring out some stuff. I think A&M takes their lump early on for Missouri in that one. And then it kind of evens out a little bit. You get UMass on the road. Shout out going up to Amherst for that one. I think that's a good move from Missouri going on the road to go play UMass. And then Auburn, and then you finally play Alabama, right? That's kind of your first, I think, big test of the season. You go to Alabama. I'm not going to pick them to win that game right now. I think that's probably a loss. Could they be better? Sure, they could be better than Alabama. We still don't know what Kalen DeBoer is going to do at Alabama. They did lose a lot of talent. But as long as you're bringing back some of your studs and, Jalen Milrose on that roster, I'm going to take Alabama at home. But then they get a much-needed bye, right? So maybe they got their one loss, then they hit their bye week. Here's what they got coming out of the bye. Oklahoma at home, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, home against Arkansas. I mean, find me 3 losses on this schedule. I got 1 probably and 2 maybes. I think you got a probably loses to Bama and maybe loses to Oklahoma and A&M. But right now, I think I'd pick Missouri in both those games. And so, when I'm looking at this, I'm saying 11-1 seems very on the table. Obviously, maybe they win a game they shouldn't. Maybe they lose a game that they shouldn't. But all that's going to even out to, I think, over 9.5. This is a really good setup for Missouri. I think they're a dark horse playoff contender if they finish 11-1. let me roll with Drink and Co. I think this is a good group, a good coaching staff. I'm all in on the bandwagon for the Missouri Tigers this season, man. I'm excited to see what they can do.
They've got a lot of returning production. That offense is going to be fun. The defense was so much better last year than it had been. I mean, the defense had been disgusting to watch first couple years under Drinkwitz, and then they take that big jump. I think it's a great bet. They do have one of the easier schedules in the SEC, and that matters so much.
Hmm.
Biggest glaring concern for me, quite honestly, is that bye week comes way late in the season,
Yeah.
right? So what, like you mentioned, what do the injuries look like? How's the gas in the tank, right? Are we kind of crawling to the finish line? Maybe so, but I think Missouri has as good of a chance of going 10 plus wins as any team in the country. I'll say
Well,
that.
and yeah, the good news too is they do have the 2 bye weeks. They get a bye week right before they go to A&M, and then a bye week right between Bama and OU. So, like, it's you're not really getting much of a bye when the hardest team you play in the first quarter or third of your season is what, maybe Boston College or Vanderbilt. Y'all do a
Right.
toss up for that one. I have no interest in watching those 2 teams play on a football field, but you get those kind of 4 in the middle. I think is going to be their kind of key stretch there at A&M. They do play Auburn at home. They do go to Alabama. That's a couple of tough road games. Not to discount at UMass by any means, but a couple of tough road games in that stretch. Not a lot of time at home. That's kind of a place where a college team could kind of lose their rhythm. Not playing in front of your home fans very much could kind of get into a weird funk, but that means they got to start losing, and I don't think they lose until Alabama.
I like it. I like it. Tigers are building something special there in Como. I'm going to take us to the Big 12, and I'm going to go, I think, shake hands with a fan base that maybe hasn't loved us all that much first couple years of the podcast. We are going to West Virginia to sing country roads. The first 2 years of this podcast, we were very anti-Mountaineers, right? I mean, we were big on the block that Neil Brown was going to get fired last year,
Yeah.
and until Trey planted his flag in the ground and said, "Get ready, weird stuff is going to happen." I think we were all just resigned to the fact that West Virginia was going to be terrible, right? I mean, in that wasn't just our opinion. The media picked West Virginia to finish dead last in the Big
Yeah.
12, and then lo and behold, they go off and have an incredibly successful year. Currently, the over under for West Virginia is 6.5. Going over is minus money, little minus 135. And that's the way that I'm going to advise you to lean if you're into picking college football totals. West Virginia
Gotta
has
throw that up there.
Garrett Green back at quarterback, which very strangely has been crowned Prince of College Football by PFF. They rated him the top returning quarterback in all of college football in February, which he's good, don't get me wrong, but also only completed 52% of his passes last year, and is not a
All,
polished QB1 to say the
all of
least. Like
college football?
all of college football, they planted their flag
They
early
know
and said, "This
Jalen
guy."
Milroe's coming back, right? Like,
It's
he was
very
just in the Rose Bowl. I mean, he's
listen.
not even the best. I don't know, but like, yeah, I don't know. Come on, man.
PFF has a lot of strange takes. That one
Yeah.
is up there, and that's not. I don't even think that's sliding Garrett Green. Like, just
No,
he's
it's
objectively not the best quarterback in college football. I
right.
don't think that's a hater
He's
take to
good.
say that. But he is a true dual threat. He's developed well. He's developed into a winner. And gosh, man, in the age of NIL, when everyone is going to the next school for the next bag and chasing that next payday, to have a kid that legitimately loves playing for his school and he's going to go grind it out, like that's so refreshing. So,
Mhm.
Garrett Green has won me over. I'd consider myself a fan. They have an electric running back room. Jaheim White really broke out a season ago when they thought it was going to be CJ Donaldson. He couldn't stay healthy. Jaheim White said, "All right, I'll take carries," and had himself a nice little year. They get Jaden Bray to transfer in from Oklahoma State at the wide receiver position, and then their defense looks like it's going to be solid. They lost a bunch of transfers in the secondary a year ago. They were better than what we expected them to be. This year, the linebacker room is expected to be one of the strengths of that team. And oh, by the way, they get uh, Josiah Trotter back. He missed all of last year. Was supposed to be their star linebacker. Missed last year with a leg injury that he suffered in the preseason. He's back. I think West Virginia also has a very workable schedule. Now, they open in the backyard brawl with Penn State. Take your pick there, coin flip. That is in Morgantown, so a big win for West Virginia getting that game at home. Uh, and I'm sorry, that's not the backyard brawl. That's West Virginia in Pitt. Blanking on the rivalry game that they
All
play
good.
against Penn State.
I didn't catch it either, man. I was
Look that up for me. They play Albany, then they play against Pitt in week 3. And then they start Big 12 play against Kansas. Now, if they can go 2-2 in that stretch, I think they're off to a great start. Then they're at Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State, at Arizona. We don't know what Arizona is going to be. We don't really know what Oklahoma State or Iowa State are going to be as well. So if you're telling me the total that you got to get to is just 6.5, you got to clear 7 wins. Again, I think you can find 2 wins in that stretch. So you're 4-4 at worst. Not a sexy start. But to get me to that over, then all I have to do is win 3 of at Cincinnati, Baylor, UCF, and at Texas Tech. UCF, we'll see what they're like, right? KJ Jefferson taking over at quarterback. I don't think Cincinnati is going to be all that special. And so going to Nippert Stadium out of a bye, I don't think it's all that hard. I think West Virginia can go get that win. Baylor comes to them. That's a home game. And then they go to play Texas Tech. I think you can find 3 more wins on that schedule. If it's not in the final 4 games, maybe you knock off, Kansas State at home, right? Missouri did that to Kansas State last year. So I think the schedule is workable. Is it a 9-10 win season? No, probably not. But with what West Virginia has coming back, I like them to find their way to 7 or 8 wins this season.
Yeah, there's only really 3 games I think they're like destined to lose, maybe 4 that I think I could convince myself into. Yeah, Penn State I think is for sure a loss. I don't think they're beating Kansas, and I don't think they're not going to beat Oklahoma State on the road either. It's give me the Ollie Gordon show over everything this year probably. I mean, look, Ollie Gordon's going to have a fun season. Tease up, baby, let's go. But I mean, look, you're probably right. I mean, there's a lot of games in there that maybe they're toss-ups, maybe they're kind of sort of wins, but I think they can find their way through. And really my mindset with West Virginia this year, and this is going to be a lot of the teams in the Big 12 until we see what they're really working with, is just why not us, right? You can
Sure.
make that case for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 teams in the Big 12. We go, yeah, why not them, right? They relatively easier schedule in the Big 12 this year. They're missing a couple of good teams. And, I think that you can say, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Penn State aside, the rest of those games they should have a chance to win. If not, maybe be favored to win those. I like that. So, yeah, I don't think this is too bad. And, maybe we have to retire the Neil Brown syndrome and we have to retire the West Virginia, at least their football team's prospects hatred. We don't hate West Virginia by any means. Even when we picked them to lose, we like West Virginia. We like the vibes out there in Morgantown. We just didn't think your football team was very good for a little bit. And, he sure proved us wrong last season. So, we'll see what happens. I'm still a little bit hung up on Garrett Green being the best returning quarterback. I'm like Quinn Ewers, Jalen Daniels, like these guys not Matt. These guys exist. Dylan Gabriel's out there too. I mean, he played college football last season. I don't know. Cam Rising, I know he's not technically returning, but he's returning from previous seasons. So I don't know. I'm just spitballing quarterbacks here, and I'm thinking, I don't know that Garrett Green's better than a lot of these guys.
I mean, yeah, truly a terrible take from PFF. Now, so
Jackson
I looked
Dart. I mean,
the backyard brawl is obviously West Virginia and Pitt, so that's week 3. Hand up on that. But what I didn't realize was that Penn State West Virginia is just called the Penn State West Virginia football rivalry. And you go to their wiki page. Until last year, they hadn't played since 1992. Penn State currently owns a 5-game winning streak, and they lead the all-time series against the Mountaineers 49-9-2. So the Neers haven't gotten a lot of wins against the Nittany Lions. We'll break that down. That's going to be one of the top week 1 games that we get to preview. I think it could be a lot closer maybe than you'd think automatically on paper. Last year, a 38-15 result in favor of the Nittany Lions. We'll see what Penn State's offense can do. But anyway, the point is 7 to 8 wins, I think, is on that schedule. It's getting my stamp of approval. I'm taking West Virginia and the over this season. is one of my best bets.
And they can definitely get there, and it's not completely out of the question that would be the case. I think they can get there. Also, DeQuan Finn, Preston Stone. I'm just trying to think of quarterbacks I'd rather have than Gary Green right now. I'm not trying to trash on Gary Green in the West Virginia segment. I think they're going to have a good season, but I'm not going to get over that. I'm going to be thinking of quarterbacks for the next 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, yeah, he's probably better too. And I'm sure that I'm missing.
No, he only turned the ball over 4 times through the air last year, but 29 total touchdowns.
He only completed 53% of his passes.
Yeah, literally half of your passes. That's a bridge too.
And I think he's good and talented, and he could certainly surge this season. Like, I'm not taking anything away from him, but that's a pretty crazy, preseason take that I'm not ready to get behind it. Will Howard, that's another one I'd take. Will Rogers, maybe even. I don't know. We'll see.
Will Rogers is stinky.
I'm still waiting to see if he's a system guy or if he's just needed to get out of Mississippi State guy. I'm curious to see.
He's Captain Checkdown is what he is.
But
this isn't to take shots at all the other quarterbacks. Write in. Let us know what you think about our best bets. Today's episode at 3TechPod, Instagram, Twitter. You can find us on our YouTube if you're listening on Spotify, which the podcast audience is growing voraciously currently. It's been a lot of fun to welcome new Jimmys and Joes here as the preseason really ramps up. We're almost to media days, which is great. And of course, the college football game comes out in just a couple months. Like, subscribe. Thanks for hanging out with us. For Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious, how about